Greetings, nostalgia nerds. It's Magic Cyclops. You might remember me from absolutely nothing because you've never heard of me before. You are listening to the Don't You Forget About Me podcast.
And welcome back to another thrilling episode of the New Wave Music Podcast. As always, this is your host, Steve.
And I'm the co-host, T-Bone. And yes, this is thrilling, Steve.
Very thrilling. We'd like to welcome our listeners back. And if this is your first time, we hope you like it. T-Bone, today we're finally going to get around to reviewing the album from The Fix. I know we've been teasing this for months.
Yeah, we've had to push things back, unfortunately, but we're finally getting around to this one.
And our listeners will no doubt remember The Fix from such songs as Red Skies, One Thing Leads to Another,
You rock for cover around this heat, and why don't they do what they say what they mean? One thing leads to another. Tell me something more. I know I listen too loud, but then one thing leads to another. Yeah.
and Secret Separation.
There will be no more isolation in our secret separation. You touch my heart so deeply, you rescued me. Now free.
Oh, yeah, classic songs, absolutely. So this new album is called Every 5 Seconds, and it was released this year, 2022. This is the 11th studio album for The Fix, and the first album in 10 years since Beautiful Fiction, which is another album that I really enjoyed quite a bit.
It's a great album.
Yeah. So, we have really pretty much the whole original band. We have Cy Curnin on vocals, Adam Woods on drums, Rupert Greenall on keyboards. Now, those were original members from 1979 on. And then we have Jamie West Oram on guitars and Dan K. Brown on bass. Jamie joined The Fix in 1980 and Dan joined in 1983. So, like I say, since at least 1983, these are all original band members, which is not really something that we see all that often from the bands that we talk about.
And the album Every 5 Seconds opens up with the track A Life Survived.
I'm screaming into the void of a life survived but never lived.
T-Bone, I love how this one kind of opens up with an ambiance vibe and subtle use of that harmonica. Cy's vocals are stronger than ever and outstanding on this track. This track does a great job of trying to build upon itself. I love the track through the lyrics, even though the lyrics are kind of more of a somber note, reflecting a life of regret and sorrow. This to me is still an outstanding Fix song.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this quite a bit. It starts off kind of instrumentally very sultry, and then Cy's vocals kick in, like you mentioned. They're very good. Jamie's guitars kind of smolder underneath the keyboards until about a minute and a half in, and then the bass joins in strongly. This, I think, is a very assured start to this album, and I think it may be one of the most mature tracks that the Fix has ever produced.
Oh, without a question. From there we go to the second track, Closer.
Pressure builds, anger grows, blows the lid as it overthrows. Blind rage counting down, going orders lost the town. Getting closer, getting closer.
This was one of the singles that was released prior to the release of the album. I've really liked this song. It's grown on me a lot. And I do feel that this song here will, if you've seen The Fix live, this is going to become probably a staple in one of their live shows. Jamie's guitar work does a great job to accompany Cy's vocals. We actually saw them live a few months ago, and they did this song. It sounded really well live.
Yes, they did.
And if you have not seen The Fix live, Cy is probably one of the second best frontmen I've seen, right behind Andy McCluskey from OMD.
Oh, yeah, no question. Yeah, I think of any song on this album, this one reminds me the most of classic Fix. This is actually one of my favorite songs on the album. I mean, it has a fantastic beat accompanied by fine guitar work and keyboards. Midway through, Jamie gets to flex his guitars a little bit, employing some different styles. The variety of sounds here is what I think makes this track so strong. And that's not even including Psy's voice, which I think is spot on.
Then we move into Take What You Want.
Take what you want from me. Every beat of my heart. Take what you want from me. You're so free. They cannot take what I have to give.
T-Bone, I loved how this one kind of opens with that soft keyboards from Rupert. Psy's vocals will slowly build in, and then that drum kicks in and it kicks the song into full force.
Yeah, I completely agree, because my notes say Rupert's lush keyboards begin the track, and they're a great combination with the vocals. Then shortly after that, all the instruments join in. But for me, I kept hearing different keyboard sounds. I thought Rupert's work on that was just fantastic, and this one really starts to rock about midway through.
Yeah.
Really good track, and that leads us up to the fourth track, Wake Up.
I heard somebody broke out. Somebody set fire. They're burning wrong again. Will this house be home again? Oh, if only we stood up. If only we spoke out.
And with the initial guitar chords, Steve, I thought that we'd been transported to 1990 and was listening to Nirvana. Which for me is not a good thing. I am one of the few out there, but I am not a Nirvana fan. But once the other instruments come in, especially the pounding drums and some sumptuous keyboards, it became easy to forgive. Psy's vocals, they oftentimes have kind of a gothic tone to them until he changes the sound to what we've become so familiar with.
Maybe you're joking-ish about how this was sounding a bit grungy when we first heard the single last year.
I'm not joking.
But I, for one, really enjoyed this raw sound. It's kind of more raw from Psy, like you're talking about. And then he kind of halfway through kick his vocals back up to what you're used to hearing. And I really like the lyrics on there. It's time to wake up and question everything you see.
Yeah. No, it's really just that opening guitar riff that has that, grungy, Nirvana kind of sound. Yeah. I mean, am I joking a little bit? Maybe, but it did remind me of Nirvana, which I'm not a fan of. But like I said, it was easy to forgive.
Which leads us into the track Suspended in Make Believe.
Is it all a dream? Waking in me, suspended in make believe.
Well, T-Bone, this track does slow down a little bit, especially from Wake Up. Almost like the album is kind of at this point taking its time to catch up and catch a breath. After 4 very solid songs, this one does kind of slow down a little bit. This one here just didn't really connect with me all throughout the album. This is probably my least favorite song on the album. It's one that to be honest, I struggle to make it through.
Yeah. I probably liked it a little bit more than you did. You're right. Things do slow down a bit on this track. I found that there's sort of a mystical design to this one, which I found very alluring. Once again, though, it's Rupert's rich keyboards that I found to be the highlight. And that takes us to the 6th track, which is one of my favorite on the album. It's called Lonely as a Lighthouse.
Don't leave me lonely, lonely as the lighthouse. Don't leave me drowning out at sea.
I found this to have perfect use of ambient sound to start the song. Not to sound like a broken record, but Psy's vocals are powerful on this track, and Jamie's guitars, along with Dan's bass, provide a great backbone to the track, really driving it forward. A guitar solo midway through. It's short and sweet, but just right. And just as you think the track is starting to lose momentum late in the song, it finishes for me on a very powerful note. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it's a great song. I'm surprised that it's one of your favorites, as it's over 5 minutes. And
I've grown.
That's good. But I did like the opening track to this album. This one, lyric wise, also deals with loneliness and depression, but it's done in a way that the Fix can make this into a very enjoyable track that you're going to want to keep coming to and revisiting. I really enjoyed this. I was also surprised that they did this as one of their second to last songs as an encore in the last time we saw them live.
Well, I think it's that good of a track.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean,
great.
they played, I believe, either 5 or 6 songs live off the new album.
I think it was 6.
Yeah, and they all fit in so well with their repertoire. I can see why they can play those, whereas many bands don't really play as many new songs as they do their old. I think these fit in.
And you could tell the audience maybe was not as familiar, but they still connected with the audience.
I think so.
And then we jump into the track Cold.
It left me cold, cold, cold. It just left me. Yeah, cold.
The music on this track is amazing. I like how it opened. I really enjoyed how it opened with Psy's vocals. They work well. The chorus is good and catchy. However, I feel this song does go on just a little bit too long.
And see, I'm going to disagree with you on that. This is actually, well, I guess it'd be the third of my favorite songs on this album. I thought Psy's singing is the focal point at the beginning of the track. All the instruments are there. They kind of swirl in the background, but his singing is passionate and forceful and quite possibly the strongest on any song on this album. This actually, like I mentioned, is one of my favorites on the album. It's right up there with the best. You're absolutely right. It is one of the longest track. It is the longest track at 6.5 minutes. But for me, and I must be getting better in my old age, but this one just did not wear out for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's good. Then we jump into the track Spell.
In this role I am cast. Every scene plays out reruns of the past. Should've known better. Got caught in a maze over and over again.
This one is a relatively short track, but to me, T-Bone, this is probably the second skippable track on the album for me. It just did not really work or connect to me.
Yeah, well, I think maybe I liked it a little bit more than you did. The keyboards, I think, although I will say it is kind of a little bit more of a standard track, but I think those keyboards help elevate it. I did like the oh backing vocals on it. I found the instrumentation equally good, but I must say I am glad that this was one of their shorter songs. And that takes us up to the 11th track, Women of Flesh and Blood.
A woman of flesh and blood, I wanna look at you. Woman of the world, I wanna talk to you. A woman of flesh and blood, I wanna touch you.
Now, Steve, I'm not really sure what to think about this song. At times it's kind of tender. Other times, especially with Psy vocals, it's significantly over the top and almost operatic in its way that only a rock song can be.
Turn the wheel the wrong way, waiting for the countdown, looking for a place to stay. All innocence, don't know why I felt I was on the run. Found a room, open the book.
Like I say, it's kind of just all over the map, but I think it's hardly the worst song of the bunch.
Yeah, vocally wise, it might sound a little different, but that's actually because Jamie, the guitarist, is actually doing vocals on this album.
Oh, is that right? I did not know that.
And Psy will jump in at times, and you can tell when it switches over to Psy. Psy, I think, did a great job in assisting Jamie with the vocals by adding kind of the backing vocals, and at times almost kind of a raw duet.
Well, you learn something new every day.
And closing out the album is the track Never Ending.
Come on, babe, today is the day, but no other point now. It's never ending. The strengths we call curve and swing, the way it unfolds. It's never ending.
T-Bone, as the saying goes, they save the best for last, or at least in my opinion. This was my favorite track on the album. I love the guitar mix, how it was mixed with the percussions to open the track. And once that chorus kicks in, I'm all in for this one. I found it to be a very enjoyable track.
Yeah, I like this one quite a bit too. different from the previous track where I thought it was a little mix all over the place. Things get really back in focus on this final track. For me, it started off as a very simple song, but then things start to really pick up. I really enjoyed the change of tempo midway through.
Yeah.
Makes for an interesting and a fun listen on this one. I can see why it's one of your favorites.
So overall, with this album here, T-Bone, I really hope we don't have to wait another 10 years for a new Fix album.
Boy, I hope not.
With the exception of 2 songs, I really enjoyed this album. It's one that I would still recommend picking up. If you're a diehard fan of the Fix, you've already had this album long before we've even got to this review. If you're a casual fan, maybe didn't really know they had a new album out, I highly recommend picking this one up.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to compete against classic Fix, especially the seminal Reach the Beach. This is awfully close, though. It has great songs, fantastic musicianship, and strong vocals that come together to make a wonderful album. It's clear that all the time these guys have been together, they not only know each other very well, but they trust each other's abilities. So agreed. Even with a few minor missteps, I think it's clear that I, along with you, Steve, recommend this album quite a bit. I believe fans of the band are going to like what they hear. When we mentioned that we were getting ready to review Every 5 Seconds, some people that listened to the podcast expressed how much they already liked the album. I couldn't agree more.
Well, we're in between album reviews, T-Bone, so that must mean one thing. It's time for some music news.
Absolutely, yeah. So The Cure is going to be doing a 30th anniversary deluxe edition reissue of Wish, and that's going to come out on October 7th, but the vinyl will not come out till November 25th. Steve, this thing is loaded. It's 3 discs. The first disc has the full album. It's been remastered. The second disc, though, is going to feature 21 previously unreleased demos. And the third disc is going to have things such as the never released on CD or digitally Lost Wishes EP, along with unreleased songs such as A Wendy's Band. It should be a pretty good set for those that are big Cure fans.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Wish is probably one of my favorite Cure albums. It gets a little overshadowed by Disintegration because that was just such an amazing album. It's hard to follow up, but Wish does a great job.
Oh, it's a fantastic album.
And this album may spark some interest with our listeners. It's called Life Moves Pretty Fast, the John Hughes Mixtape Collection, which essentially is, I believe it's like a 4 or 5 album collection of all the music from the John Hughes movies, ranging from 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, She's Having a Baby, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the classic Hughes movies. And it will even feature some of the music that was for the Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which, as we know, never really had an official soundtrack release.
And then we also had some news about the Echo and the Bunnymen tour that's going on right now. Ian McCulloch has had to leave some shows due to illness. They have played since then, so kind of keep an eye on that. They have had to cancel a couple of shows. Most likely the rest of the tour will be fine.
Hey, this is Michael. I'm here at Lost 80s Live with the New Wave Music Podcast. Gonna have a great time.
And as you just heard, we just ran into a listener, Michael, from the Lost 80s Live show that me and T-Bone attended.
Yeah, it was interesting. I guess our show was the first on this new tour this year. Well, Steve, things did not go did not go very well. I would think that since they have done this tour for 20 years, that they would be ready even for that first show. But Steve, as you witnessed, it was a little bit of a disaster.
Yeah, it was a big show with I think there was 12 bands on there. So there's bound to be a few hiccups. I mean, the doors were an hour and a half late opening, which caused the show to go long.
Yeah. Well, and like I say, Steve, they've been doing this a long time. You would think that they would know how to get it even on the first
My biggest
show.
complaint is whoever was running the soundboard for our show, I don't say this often, but needs to be fired.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible job with that sound mix.
Bad. Yeah, they just weren't prepared. I mean, no, it's difficult, I'm sure, putting on a big show like that. The crowd was really into it, though, I must say. They really enjoyed the different bands. I was happy with that, and we had a pretty good seat, so it was well worth it.
I mean, some of the bands we ran into, and Emotion, I thought did a great job that we saw.
Wang Chung, as
Oh,
usual.
Wing Chung killed it as always.
Yeah, I really would like to see a full set of theirs, not just the few songs that they play.
Yeah, and even the English Beat did really well, considering they had some major hiccups, as we could see from our spots from mics not working to amps not working.
To their toaster not being able to show up for this one, he missed his flight.
Yeah, but Dave's such a showman and professional, he was able to go through it, and I don't think most of the crowd even knew that there was an issue.
Probably not.
And then we get to some other bands, so.
Yeah, there was a few that just did
Unfortunately,
not
Naked
work.
Eyes, I don't know what happened there. That was very disappointing.
Yeah, I think he had sound issues also, but it was a mess. And Tommy Two Tone, maybe a little bit better than the last time we saw him, but yeah, it was rough.
Dramarama was really rough to sit through.
Very rough. Yeah, although there was one fan up front that was having the time of her life.
Yes, there was. But overall, I mean, it's an enjoyable show. You kind of go, you get to see what you know what you're in for with that type of show.
Right, absolutely.
It's one I'd still go again. I just hope they go to a different venue.
Yeah, the venue that we saw him at was just too big. I mean, it had pretty good sized crowd on the floor, but around the arena itself, it was very sparse. And yeah, they don't need to be in such a big location. But hey, it is what it is. All right, so Steve, up next, we are going to look at the most recent release from Toad the Wet Sprocket. You'll most likely remember them for such songs as All I Want.
All I want is to feel this way, to be this close, feel the same. All I want is to feel this way. The evening speaks, feel it say.
Fall Down.
When will we fall down? Then jump back, gotta get out of here, into the too long this time. Then jump back, gotta get out of here. When will we fall down?
And Walk on the Ocean.
Walk on the ocean, step on the storm, flesh becomes water, water becomes bone. Walk on the ocean.
This one is entitled Starting Now, and it was released in 2021. This is their 7th album. It is their first since 2013's New Constellation. But Steve, as we found, they do have a 2022 album called Rock and Roll Runners, but it looks like it's just material that they recorded back in 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one has Glenn Phillips on vocals, guitars, and keyboards, Todd Nichols on guitars, Dean Denning on bass and keyboard, and Josh Daubin on drums. Now, Glenn, Todd, and Dean are all original members. Josh came to the band much more recently. Now, Steve, a little trivia here for you. I don't know if you know this, but there is another band that used the name, which is from a Monty Python skit, the Toad the Wet Sprocket. They were a band of the same name formed in England between the mid-70s and then disbanding in the early 80s. So yeah, they're not. This is not the first band that was named Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the album Starting Now kicks off with the track Game Day.
Oh, it's a game day, get out and play today. Don't let the fear of the past get in the way. Remember why you came, beauty and the pain. There's a million ways for you to play.
This is a good song to jump back into the sound of Toad the Wet Sprocket. This feels like revisiting an old familiar friend. The guitars, the lyrics, the melody work very well and immediately pulls you back into that sound that is no doubt Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good opening for the album. It's a bit more of a mellow song, which I think we're going to find this is a common theme on this album. It does have very rich instrumentation with wonderful guitars and bass. I felt that Glenn Phillips' vocals are still pretty strong, and he sounds really good on this track. And that leads us up to the second track, Transient Wells.
Don't like cooking meals for one. Miss the chaos and the noise, the family work that's never done. Now in dreams I swim with the transient waves.
Now, Steve, If I heard this track without knowing who the band was, I would have sworn we were listening to Jackson Browne. And that's not a bad thing. Jackson Browne is an outstanding songwriter, but it really surprised me on how familiar this track sounded. Along with the guitars, I really like the drums, which were a little bit more subdued and behind the scenes on the song. It's a good song, but I'm really surprised about what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, see, this one for me it's a nice ballad that highlights Glenn's vocals very well. I enjoyed this track. Like you said, I did like the use of the soft acoustic percussions, and there's a subtle use of an electric guitar that works well to accompany Glenn's vocals and just gets that track just a little bit of a push.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we jump into the song Best of Me.
Oh, she says, baby, we got all that we need. Don't you worry about a thing. We'll make it through, giving you the best of me.
T-Bone, this one here, I would never expect Toad the Wet Sprockets to be singing with a Doobie Brother. Michael McDonald, the Silver Fox himself, does some backing vocals with Glenn on this, and it actually works surprisingly very well.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite songs on the album, and I think it was really highlighted by that familiar voice. You know, I didn't catch it initially. I had to kind of do a little research to find who was doing the backing vocals and the kind of duet vocals with it. And yeah, to find that it was Michael McDonald was, for me, a very pleasant surprise. I think really it's what makes the track strong is having that surprisingly different vocal style on there that he employs.
Then we get to the title track, Starting Now.
Starting with the next breath, I'll dig a little deeper, live a little kinder, love a little sweeter. Starting now.
While this was an enjoyable track, I gotta admit that I struggled to get into this one. And I really just can't put my finger on why. It just maybe was not enjoyable or a tight track like the previous couple songs before it. T-Bone, this is one I just kind of struggled, and I just can't really recommend this track.
Yeah, well, I maybe liked it a little bit more, but it's not one of my favorites by any stretch. It's more of a mid-tempo track. I still found Glenn Phillips' vocals to be really good on it. And in addition, I think so are the keyboards, which blend just right and they don't take over the song. They just fill in, I thought, really well on this track. And that leads us up to the fifth track, In the Lantern Light.
In the lantern light, flicker of the flame, you have never been so beautiful. Wouldn't change a thing. Thanks for every day. Came home to you. Came home to you.
So this one is a little bit of a slower song. We're kind of to a slower pace on this, but I really did find it to be kind of a beautiful ballad. I really enjoyed the subtle backing vocals, which accompany Phillips' voice wonderfully.
Yeah, and T-Bone, this one actually is one of my favorite ones on the album. It is a bit slower, as you said, but I feel the band seems to be back up to form with this slower song. Glenn's vocals get a shine on this one, especially like you mentioned with the soft backing vocals in that chorus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you on that. Next up is Hold On.
Where is our common ground? Everything's falling down. Hold on to what matters. Give me you're tired and you're poor. We yearn to breathe free. Send the homeless tempest tossed to me.
And on this one, the pace definitely picks up a little bit. It has some really great guitar work throughout.
Yeah, it does. And I also like how there's a subtle tempo change that kind of builds up throughout that song. It's very kind of subtle. It builds up and up to it. And again, this one's one of my other favorite ones on the album. I enjoyed the lyrics, the vocals, and the music all on this one. Which takes us to the next song, Truth.
I don't believe in love, but I believe in love. I want to think we're better than what we have become. It's time to speak to power. It's time to shake things up. I don't believe in nothing, but I believe in love.
It's a bit more up-tempo than all the songs have been on this album, and almost at times kind of has a gospel or revival type beat or vibe to it.
Truth won't be denied. Friend with numbers proper, always proper.
And as they say in the song, it's time to shake things up a bit. And this one definitely does shake things up, at least up to this point in the album.
Yeah, you know, this actually is one of I think my second favorite track on the album. The style really changes on this song. Instead of that kind of mellow rock sound, we have a little bit more of a soulful alternative country style on this track. The drums are playful and they move the song along nicely. What I like most about the song is that it sounds a little bit different than the other tracks on this album. It's a very short track. I think one that easily could have been longer.
Then we go to the song Slowing Down.
Turn them down now, all the voices filling my head up with ugly noises. Out of the silence, I need the stillness. Worked hard to get here, don't want to lose this. I'm getting better at slowing down,
T-Bone, I actually really enjoyed this track as well. It's a little bit more of a slow, as we've seen on this album.
Figures, huh?
The lyrics kind of grab me a little bit. It's more kind of about taking life in, slowing down and enjoying things. And it could be hard to accept getting older. And you need to slow down a bit and enjoy life. And I actually kind of really like the song.
Well, for me, this song kind of epitomizes the entire album, and the title says it all. It does have it does have great musicianship throughout it, but these are melodious, mature songs, and all too often, I think they're just a little bit too reserved. For me, I really wanted this one just to break out, but I suppose that's just not Toad's style.
No, but the next song, Dual Citizen. This one here kind of, again, surprised me, as I never thought I'd have a little bit of Sith work in a Toad the Wet Sprocket song. But that's how it does open, with an electric Sith opening. It's a bit different sound for Toad, or actually quite a bit different sound for Toad, but I actually found it enjoyable. I liked how they kind of go from almost spoken word into combining that with the backing vocals for the chorus.
Yeah, and I like this track quite a bit also. It also opens up with some interesting drum guitar combinations. There's a kind of a bit of underlying funk on this track, which comes to a delightful surprise. Philip's vocals are a little more muted here, unlike the rest of the album. I found this song to be a bold, unusual experiment, and I liked it quite a bit. It lets the instruments take the forefront, which I thought was a change that was very welcome for me. And so that leads us up to the final track, Fever.
Oh, my children, where you gonna go? Now you lost the land you called your home. When the earth is burning, fever on her brow.
Phillips is back on the focus on this, the final track, but he's accompanied with some soulful strings that work perfectly within the song. Midway through, a guitar line comes in and becomes the focus for a period of time. I really felt this was a great way to end the album.
T-Bone, I agree with you 100% on this one. To close things out, we get this very nice, beautiful acoustic track. This one definitely gets to show Glenn's vocals that they have not aged a day. That's one thing I think we can agree on with this album. His vocals work very well. I also love that subtle use of, I don't know if it's a violin, but some type of string.
Yeah, those strings.
That come in does use to highlight the track, and that really stood out to me as well.
Yeah, I agree. So these are they're all fairly short songs. Fever is the longest at just about over 5 minutes, and that makes this album, I felt, a very easy listen. That being said, it's not a very exciting album. Toad has always been on that borderline when it comes to 80s alternative. Here, as with I think most of their works, it might be closer to describing them as kind of more of an alternative folk.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, this one is a short album, but it to me felt long. To get through this review, I struggled with it. Not that it's a bad album. To be honest, I got bored.
Well, and I agree. I agree on that.
It's one that, if you're a fan of Toad, you already have it. So, if you're a casual fan, I would probably maybe get a track here or there that you maybe like. But as far as a full album, I can't recommend it.
Yeah, I'm going to just give this album a mild recommendation, but I do think you're going to have to be in a particular mood to fully take it in. The musicianship is excellent, and as you mentioned, Steve, Philip's vocals sound great. When you're looking for a great album, those are obviously the two things that are most needed, but an album that can hold your interest is equally important. This may not be that album.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the New Wave Music Podcast. Looking ahead to our next episode, we are going to be reviewing the new album from Bananarama and a listener-requested artist, Information Society. And T-Bone, our listener, did reach out to us to recommend Information Society. If our listeners have recommendations or want to get a hold of us, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a number of different social media sites. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can really kind of just look up New Wave Music Podcast to find us on those. There's also our email address, Don't You Forget podcast@yahoo.com. Please send us an email or shoot us a message from the services. We'd love to hear from you. We always love to hear an idea from a listener on what we should review on one of our upcoming podcasts. And we hope you enjoyed, and we look forward to talking with you next time.